Good morning,
Hey,
everybody.
good morning, Phil. How you doing? Hey, before we get started, I want to kind of talk about our sponsor this month. All this month, we're getting sponsored by Thrivent. They're the folks that Thrivent are reimagining finances, services for individuals as well as communities. As I talk about it in my book quite often, especially if I'm speaking on the 4 years of career transition or whether it's in the book you're just starting off, you know, evaluating your finances is so critically important just to make sure that you've got enough gas in the tank to carry you through career transition. And the folks at Thrivent definitely can help you there. One of the things I want to add is just, a tip of the day is a focus forward on the financial group. Skip Nelson, as you guys saw last, probably 2 meetings ago or 2 of our shows ago, he actually pitched it in for us. He's out there. So the technology is wonderful. If you guys are looking for a free consultation, I highly recommend it. Those guys have helped me. My 401k just in this past year, even though the Dow may be only up 12%, my 401k is up 40%. These guys are tremendous. Just reach out. You can scan on your phone and hit and schedule some time with Skip Nelson. But those guys are great. So Phil?
Thank you, Thrivent, and thank you, everybody, for joining us Saturday morning with George and Phil. 22 minutes to help you become the best version of yourself, whether you found yourself out of shape, struggling in a dead-end job, or job transition. We are your hosts, George Murray, myself, Phil Connor, to help you move from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. We're glad you could meet us early on a Saturday morning. We do encourage questions, and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. Today, we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to both of us, and we may go a little bit longer than our 22 minutes. George, we're going to talk about harnessing a positive mindset today.
Hoorah. This is one of the things, especially that's going on right now in the last year. It's so challenging and it's so easy to slip into that slippery slope of negativity. You just have to turn around and work a little bit just to be tenaciously optimistic, which I always like to use that. I didn't coin the phrase, but I definitely overuse it a lot. And because the alternate, right, and I'm sure we've met a lot of those Eeyores that we go out there in our circle of our friends, we're kind of going around, we're all talking, and there's just one person that, for whatever reason, long in career transition, et cetera, they're just not feeling that positive mindset.
No, so before we talk about mindset, associations are really important, George, and you and I have talked about it on this show. In fact, that surrounding yourself with a group of people is incredibly important. But why is it that sometimes people find themselves surrounded by a bunch of Eeyores, if you will? And explain what you mean by an Eeyore.
Yeah, so Eeyores to me, and I'm sure everybody's watched Winnie the Pooh, is that it's just for whatever reason the glass is half empty. There's one cloud in the sky, and they're focused on the cloud versus the nice blue sky. And for whatever reason, because if you've been out in career transition, you've been trying everything, and you just get frustrated. Career transition can weigh you down, even though maybe each day may feel like a month. Before you know it, 3 months go by, and you're like, wow, this is just weighing on me, and the finances are going out, and all that pressure, the spousal pressure. Hey, when are you going to find a job? Why are you doing all these coffee events? All that stuff can be pressured, and it can tend to get you in a negative mood.
And if everybody around you has that same negative mood, that makes it even more difficult for you to remain positive and harness that positive energy. How have you found to be successful at energizing yourself and surrounding yourself with energizing people?
Well, first and foremost, as I talk in the book, it's important to schedule your day in the morning. It's kind of like putting the mask on, right? When you're getting in an airplane, and I just recently did some traveling, the first thing they tell you, put your mask on first before you can help and assist everybody else. And the same concept. You got to get up early in the morning. You got to find ways to motivate you. So when I was in my first career transition, I kind of looked in the mirror after a couple months after being frustrated and kind of maybe slipping into that Eeyore effect. I said, hey, you know what? I got to focus on the things that I can control. So, I started with my personal board of advisors, right? Just reaching out and saying, what are the best practices? And then just scheduling my morning, getting up, exercise, and the things that I can control, morning affirmations, meditation, all that stuff just cleans yourself out, really reprograms you every day. And as I said earlier, each day feels like a month. You definitely need that reset.
Well, and George is referring to his book, Hired, Cut Your Career Search Time in Half, where he talks about that in more detail. I also have a personal board of advisors. And what I found is, you go back, there was a time in my 20s where I was really frustrated with where I was in life. And I looked around and I saw that I had surrounded myself with, all people that were good people, but in relationship to helping me achieve the things that I wanted to achieve, they weren't helping me get better. They weren't helping me stay positive and focused on the things that I wanted to achieve. And I had to be a little bit more intentional, as you described, in creating friendships and relationships and networking with people that I wanted to surround myself with. And you and I both have talked about in our time in the Twin Cities that there's one gentleman that has stood out for both of us in this area in particular of harnessing positive energy. And we're blessed to have him join us. I don't know if you want to introduce our guest, George. Well,
technical difficulty.
Modern
excited.
Technology where the suspense is building.
I'm going to tell you, before we actually let him speak, I want to tell you a little bit of history of Mr. Rye. Mr. Rye was the second gentleman I ever met in career transition. And, I'm dating myself back in 2016. Very blessed the fact that he took the time and really put me on the right road. We talk about, having people that can help lift you up, give you direction, and also hold you accountable, because again, to your point, when you start slipping, you need people to turn around and say, hey, you know what, you got to snap out of it. You got to stop being negative. And, one of the things that Greg has kind of talked to me is that each and every day you've got a choice. You can go here and you can go here. And Greg, maybe what you want to start off and talk about, do you remember my 6-month mark in my first career transition? We're sitting at Caribou Coffee and you had stated, hey, George, we're here to do your 6-month review on your career transition. How's it going? What's going well? What do you think you can improve on? And welcome.
Thank you so much, guys. It's an honor to be with you today on a Saturday morning, a beautiful Saturday morning out by the lake in Wayzata. But for me, it's just an honor to be asked to be here this morning, and knowing both of you as role models and great examples of people who do harness a positive mindset. And I think the best thing I could say about the two of you that I feed off of is your examples of what you're talking about. It's walking that talk and having a plan every day and making sure you start your day with two things that you control, and that is your attitude and your effort. And if you start with a positive attitude and willing to put forth a positive effort every day, typically good things will happen even on a bad day.
Greg, thanks for joining us and thanks for your kind words. I'm often struck by, what would you say to somebody that would says, well, look at Greg Rye. He's a successful businessman. He's got a great family, gorgeous wife, beautiful dog. It's easy for him to have a positive attitude. George Murray, he's running a big international company, and easy for him to have a positive attitude. Greg, what do you say to folks like that are saying, you know what, my life is sucks, but it's easy for you guys to be happy because you're so successful.
One of the things I've tried to do is always try to meet people where they're at. I can tell you that my life has been a roller coaster of highs and lows. I've battled in my faith. I've battled in my family. I've battled with friends. I've battled alcohol. I've battled ego. I've had all the bare knuckle knockdown episodes that could possibly happen in life. But the only thing that's really been able to turn it around for me is one. I had a posse of people that helped carry me in times of my life that I was down. But more importantly, once that has happened, you feel that sense of responsibility and obligation to let people know that you're there for them, and not there for them like telling them, boy, you do have a rough plate. Boy, I don't know how you're getting through. I mean, finding a way to be an example for them just by the way you are. Checking my ego at the door, all the things that you talked about, everything I have is great. Well, a lot of my life is great, but I tell you what, there've been times in my life where it wasn't. And so I've learned that you have to be that role model for people, knowing that any single person you come in contact with at any minute of any day, you could be the difference maker in their life. And if they meet you with your gas tank on empty, in a bad attitude, and not willing to truly listen and accept whatever crisis they may be in, you may be their last resort, their last phone call, their last, please, can you help me? And so for me, I'm 63 years old now, and I think it's the 63 years that I've learned over time to get better at this. It didn't come naturally. And I think I'm even working on self-improvement right now of making sure that when I say something that my words match my actions. And harnessing a positive mindset that you guys are talking about this morning is something I strive for every day, but it doesn't happen by accident. You really have.
Hey, Greg, I have a question.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, because, even with 9 million people still unemployed, and I think probably at least 875,000 in the state of Minnesota itself, and the average, professional, it's taking them quite a while to transition and find their next opportunity. How do I, if I've been out there for a while and I find myself, what are the things that you would suggest that I could turn this around? I mean, because again, I can't just wake up today and I'm going to be like happy, can I?
Well, I think it does start first thing in the morning, and you touched on it earlier in the show, is that you have to have a routine. For me, it's having that prayer time and meditation time in the morning. I actually try to post 2 or 3 positive things on social media and hit the button every day, and don't do it with expectations of answering people or counting your likes, but just be a positive influence. And I think if you unleash that in the morning, first absorb the meditation and the prayers, but then talk about in your own head the gratitudes. And it's the way you start your day. And then it's just being a politely aggressive guerrilla warrior, even on a bad day. And know that you never know what the day's going to lead you to, but it's starting first thing in the morning, having the routine, checking all the boxes, going back to the John Wooden fundamentals of basketball, is working on the fundamentals of your search, and making contacts via email, and making contacts on the phone, and making contacts in the mail, and delivering a book, or delivering a box of rolls, or delivering a pizza. All that activity, I don't care if you don't know exactly where that activity is going to lead, something good will happen every day. And then at the end of the day, when you come home and your wife or significant other says, how did it go today? You can look and say, I made 40 contacts today. I sent 10 emails. I sent 10 notes. I delivered a box of rolls. I delivered a book. I made 10 phone calls. I had 5 coffee meetings. You have to measure your success then at the end of the day, say, wow, that was a big day. And then on the days that you're struggling, you got to start over the next day. You got to do the Etch-a-Sketch and reset. And, I don't have the magic wand or the secret recipe, but I do know that the attitude of that mindset you own. Nobody else owns your attitude or your effort. So
That's
it's a choice.
No, that's great, Greg. And I remember reading an interview, and I've never been a huge Yankees fan, but growing up outside of Philadelphia, they were kind of the enemy. But Derek Jeter did an interview once when he had just passed the milestone of 3,000 hits, and he was talking to a group of young kids, and he said, everybody wants to talk about all the hits I got, but what they forget is that 6,700 times I went up to bat and I didn't get a hit. He says successful people learn to adjust and adapt. And just like you said, at the end of the day, don't get bogged down by how many calls you didn't make. Celebrate what you made and then adjust so you can improve on the next day. It's like the old Babe Ruth saying, sticking with baseball, when he'd strike out, they say, aren't you upset that you struck out? He goes, no, I'm just that much closer to the next home run.
Staying with the baseball analogy, I worked for the Twins the past 4 years down in Fort Myers, and Ron Gardenhire was talking to me one day before a game, and I asked him a simple question. What do you tell a rookie baseball player who hits a grand slam walk-off in the bottom of the ninth to win a big game? And Gardy looked at me and he said, I tell that young man to head to the batting cage. You know, you can celebrate the win, you can celebrate the success, but the thing that got you to the win and the success was taking swings in the cage. You got to keep it up. And so you got to create those habits that you do every day, the kinds of habits that will be productive, but maybe not as fast as you would like, but you got to keep going. You just have to keep going. And, you know, I think that the perseverance and the never give up attitude, even when, you know, somebody like you said could say, well, why everything's great for him? Well, behind the scenes, it's not always that way, and you don't know where people are. So you need to meet them where they are and be a good example. I have to be careful that when I'm having a bad day, I don't hand that off to everybody I come in contact with, because then I've just multiplied my own misery. I've now handed it off to everybody that sees me that day. And you might meet somebody that's just hanging on by a thread and you're upset by a little thing. So that attitude and your actions related to that attitude truly matter.
Well, I think everybody would point.
Go ahead, George.
That's actually a good point. You know, there's people out there that, you know, they kind of go into it, you know, career transition, even in life right now, because, you know, you might have a good job or you might have a job and things aren't going well. But you've got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. That's one of the things that I did after, you know, a couple of months of being frustrated, was just look at it and say, hey, what are the things I can control? You know, I can control up and start getting in better shape, eating better, sleeping better. But I think to your point, you know, when I truly started that regimen in the morning and adjusting those things that were working for me and kind of tossing the ones that weren't, but at least trying them. And I think to your point, Greg, gratitude is so important, right? Don't worry about the things that you don't have yet or you want and you just can't get, but be thankful. Hey, I still got a family that loves me. I still have a roof over my head, at least today. I ate today, right? You know, all those things that we take for granted. You know, 7 years ago, we were basically wanting to be where we're at today, whatever the case may be. And the fact is we don't take that time to reflect. That says, hey, we've come so far, but yet we still have a ways to go.
I think it's important to have some kind of brand you hang on to relative to your own persona. And for me, one, it's scripture-based, that I try every day to live according to Micah 6:8, which just basically simply says, be fair, be kind, be humble. Those three things will never get you in trouble. So make sure you have that ammo, those guns in your belt every day. And then you need to have some kind of system by which you go about making decisions. And for me, it's just loving, listening, discerning, and responding. So you need to have a process by way of engaging yourself, whether it be a job search or engaging when you come across somebody that's struggling with a problem. You got to have some tools out of the toolbox that you're ready to start with. You know, the loving heart, big ears, listen, and then take some time to think about it before you respond off the cuff or shoot from the hip. So if you're helping people, if you can show them that you actually have a process you follow to get to advice or a recommendation or wisdom, guidance, and counsel, it will encourage them to do the same thing. Like if you see somebody hanging on by a thread, call a timeout, let's breathe, and let's not get to the solution right now. Let's sit down and talk about how you're doing right now, this moment today. And if you do that, you've now equipped them for a way to maybe process sometime they go through the same situation again or the same mood swing by themselves. So you can't always think that you're the savior, but you can lead people with the tools and give people the best practices to have a better day simply because you showed them how.
Well, and Greg, it's not about being a Pollyanna, right? It's not about, oh, the world is just perfect. There are no flaws. There is no pain. There is no strife.
No.
But like as you're saying, but we're equipped to handle the challenges. And like Jim Rohn always says, don't wish or pray for life to be easier. You know, pray for me to get better and have better skills.
Right.
It sounds like that's what you're embracing as well.
Yeah, and I think that the mind is powerful. 99% of what we think about never happens. So you got to find a way to deal with that. This mind takes us places we probably don't want to go, and it truly has an impact on our stress levels. and then don't borrow trouble from that thought process. Being worried about things that you don't control. And I learned in my sobriety that the Serenity Prayer talks about, worrying about things you can change. Don't worry about things you can't, and having that wisdom to know the difference. Where, in my younger days, I was pretty active in the political arenas in DC and Minnesota and locally, and used to think I could change everything in the world. And now, out of that arena, I've just learned that I can make huge impacts, one person at a time, every day, every single day. You can find people that need you, that need your loving support, that need your wisdom, that need your guidance, that need your counsel. And when you get to that point, helping other people actually helps you deal with whatever you're living in. For one, it gets your mind off it. But also,
in career transition too, I mean, that's one of the things that if you're new to career transition, you're going into networking your first time. It's hard for us not to focus on ourselves because of the fact that, we don't have a paycheck. This person, has a paycheck, may have leads to their company or opportunities. But what I felt very successful is kind of leaning in and making sure you listen with intent, as well as following up and being genuinely interested. And then really starting it off as, how can I help you? Greg, talk about divine intervention, but there was maybe a little over a year and a half ago where I couldn't speak at a topic and you pitched it for me. And there was a kind of a person there that was just right in line for your message. Why don't you just briefly talk about that?
Well, for one, it's always hard to pinch hit for George Murray, because 90% of the people that were disappointed when Greg Rye's name came up on the screen, and the first 10 questions were, where's George? But I had a great morning, and I remember I was speaking at a church somewhere down in the South Metro, and afterwards, when everybody had departed, there was one gentleman sitting in the back of the room, and he came up and told me that he had toyed with that morning, either coming to hear George speak or taking his life. And that morning, he and I spent a good hour after the session, knowing that the reason he was there was not because of George Murray or Greg Rye, but that had he not come, he probably would not have made it past that day. And so the message was that day, George, was to never give up and trying to be positive and being helpful. And this guy, to this day, he just reached out to me recently. This was several years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And this person's doing very well. And some of the hurdles that he was trying to climb over in his life have been knocked down. And so never underestimate the power of your encounter and the power of your interaction. And be sure you're careful to meet people where they're at by asking some questions, like, how long's your runway? How is your family? Find out some things about them that can give you some intel relative to what kind of, diagnosis you can make as a perfect stranger in some cases that day. And hopefully by connecting the dots, you can begin to steer them in the direction. If you're not that person, it could be Phil, it could be George, it could be somebody else, to get them the help they need for whatever it is they're going through in their life. So,
Greg, that's fantastic. I know we're kind of pushing the limits on time, but I have one other thing that I'd like to ask you to weigh in on, is because you touched on it a little bit with in this world of social media, often people are airbrushing their experience in life and posting a very positive version of themselves. And we forget about that. And if we spend a lot of time on social media or watching the news, there's a lot of energy out there that's non-conducive to the experience that you're describing. So you mentioned you start your day on social media. Maybe weigh in a little bit and share with the group is where you see the positives and the negatives of social media, the media, news media, and things like that. Maybe we can kind of wrap up the show that way.
Well, one of the struggles I was having is so much of what I was seeing in the news and social media was negative, which is when I decided I was going to try to be a little bit more of a positive influence by just throwing some positive grenades out there every morning and then walking away. And also understanding that on social media, you're usually seeing people fight, or like you said, they're showing you the best things in their life. So I would say ignore the negativity and embrace the stuff that people are posting that they're happy about. I don't care if it's a vacation or graduation or a picture of their dog. Those are the kinds of things that we need more of on social media. And so I'm trying to contribute to that every day. I'm committed to never getting into any negativity, from politics to religion and the economy and all that stuff. You can have fights somewhere else. So I'm going to lob positive grenades onto social media every day and embrace people who are trying to do the same, because it's the scale is so out of whack right now. I would say 90% of what you see on social media is people fighting about stuff. And the other 10% is the people that are trying to throw some positive affirmation out there to make other people feel good. So once again, it's like what we talked about early on. It's an intentional attitude. It's an intentional mindset. And I don't care if it's on social media or on a podcast or one-on-one with somebody or meeting a perfect stranger in line. If you can find some consistency in not only the habits you have, but who are you? When people walk away from an encounter with you, how have you made them feel? You may not have solved their problem, but even in the midst of not solving their problem, you might have given them enough to make it to tomorrow. And maybe they will start exhibiting some of the same habits that have worked for you, but best practices aren't always the same for other people. So just lay the tools out and let people pick them up. It's like we don't have to fish for people, but we can certainly teach them how to fish.
That's fantastic.
Well, hey, Greg, I really appreciate your time. You've had such a positive impact in my life in the last 5.5 years. And I know that there's not at least 2 weeks that goes by that we're not emailing, texting, or whatever. And, even in career transition, if you take time out and take a breath and meet really people and understand their stories, you will find out that you'll just have best experiences. You'll actually get better, upgrading your friends, as we're going through this journey of life. We always need people that are going to prompt us up, that are going to hold us up, that are going to tout our story, but then they're also going to turn around and whip us and keep us accountable when we think we're going down in that negative slippery slope. And you, my friend, have always done that for me, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, George. Well, I appreciate the chance just to communicate here this morning, and know that anybody that's watching, if there's anything I can do to nudge or make a difference in their life, personally or professionally, my phone number and my email is very public on LinkedIn or Facebook, or you can get it from George or Phil. I'm happy to help anybody, anytime. And I mean that.
Well, we can both attest to that. Thanks again, Greg, for joining us on a Saturday morning.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
You as well, sir.
I love what Greg talks about being the light and not getting, you mentioned that the contrast of the Eeyore focusing on the cloud and kind of being in the doldrums versus Greg being the light and just being a bundle of positive energy. I love the visual of a match. If we can burn bright, just being in proximity to somebody else, we could spread that energy and spread that fire.
And the fact is it's all within us, right? It's something that we choose to do or not to do each and every day, right?
No, it's and I love the approach that he has, and you've talked about this lots of times, is being intentional and making a plan. Being a positive person is not going to just happen automatically. You've got to make a plan and tell yourself, whether it's waking up in the morning and just reading some positive affirmations, reading scripture, making prayer time, you've got to develop some habits to start your day off in a positive way.
I totally agree. For those, as Greg talked about, he's easily accessible. I can't believe the amount of time this gentleman gets, and for everybody. I mean, I don't know how he finds time for himself, but he actually does. And he inspires so many great people that I have been privileged to meet, either from an introduction from him, or it's, when I'm out networking, there's like, have you talked to Greg Rye? And it's like the top 3 people. If you're in Minnesota, top 3 people, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's been incredibly generous with his time over the years with myself. And as you said, he threw it out to everybody who's listening. You can find Greg on LinkedIn. He's just recapping that slide you have up there, George, is crew chief. If you think of the people in your life as your pit crew and the people that are supporting you when you need help, you pull into the pit and they're there to help you and get you back out on the racetrack. They're not there to coddle you. They're not there to protect you from the world, but equip you and help you get back out into the race. And Greg's a great crew chief for both of us. He's done a lot of public speaking and a lot of different topics, and he's a more than successful business owner. So just really blessed to have Greg join us today.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about our next show there, Phil?
Yeah, we talk a lot about being in transition and being in job search, but sometimes that segment of the community and maybe a lot of our listeners they're not unemployed looking for work, but they're in a cul-de-sac that they haven't found the path to be able to reach their full potential and be the best version of themselves. So our next episode in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about planning a transition while working full time, because it's always better to find a job and find that career path when you're working and have an income.
Oh, totally agree. Being recently in career transition, I can't see how people actually do it when they're in a job, even if the job's not going well for them, because career transition, finding a job is a full-time job. So we'll basically help people hopefully structure their day where they're still effective in their current role while maybe looking for their optimal role.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a valuable topic. I'm looking forward to it, George. And folks, we talk about George's book, Hired. It's available today from your local bookseller, or you can get it direct from the publisher, Kirkhouse. People there are fantastic, and you can see a code on the screen, be able to get a discount. That's probably the quickest way to get the book. It's also available on Amazon.com. If you look on there, I don't know what the number of counts is, but there is a ton of reviews. I think it's over 60 reviews now, and you can just weigh in. Don't take our word for it, but I think you'll find if you want to get hired, you need to buy Hired. And if you can't wait for a hard copy of the book, it's also available on Kindle Unlimited. Strongly recommended if you know anybody in transition that's looking to get that next job.
Well, Phil, we went over, I know, but to me, this is really passionate, especially given the time of the events that are going on in today's world. It just takes a little bit of effort for you, not only to help yourself to be in a positive mindset, but also help others. As we talked about today, you just don't know the person you're meeting today. Take for example, Robin Williams. I mean, the guy made millions and millions of people happy, but we didn't really understand what was going beyond him. So take the time, find somebody, help them. They get a little bit better, you get better, we all get better.
Amen. Have a great weekend, everybody.